A focus on youth violence as Mayor Olivia Chow meets with community leaders and Toronto police representatives. Good afternoon. The so-called Roundtable on youth violence has just wrapped up at Toronto City Hall.
It comes in the wake of several high-profile shootings where teens have been charged with murder. CTV's Mike Walker joins us now live with more. Mike.
Well, Raheem, Michelle, this was a 2-hour closed-door meeting hosted by the mayor, the first of its kind looking at tackling the rise in youth violence, especially youth gun violence, and looking at preventative measures. About 30 people taking part in this roundtable discussion, including Toronto Police Chief Myron Demke, representatives from both the federal and provincial governments, including the Attorney General and the Ministers of Mental Health and Addiction Services, as well as community advocates. Toronto Police recently reported a rise in youth gun violence this year with 114 youth firearm arrests. That's up 75% from last year. There have been a number of high-profile homicides this summer where police have charged young people. You may recall in June, a 14-year-old boy was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 7 counts of attempted murder in connection with a mass shooting that left 2 members of a men's soccer team dead and 3 others injured at North Albion Collegiate in Rexdale. And last month, police charged 2 teens, 14 and 16 years old, with second-degree murder in connection with the fatal shooting of a 16-year-old boy in Parkdale. Now, here's more from Mayor Olivia Chow and Toronto Police Chief Myron Demke on what was discussed at this morning's meeting.
We took the best practices that is happening in the community to both prevent crime, intervene, and if the person have committed, try to give them the path and the mentorship to direct them to healing and road to a healthier path, healthier communities. It's also about building healthier communities. I was very fortunate to be joined by the Chief of Police and different ministers.
What's really important today is that we're continuing to build on the tradition of a multi-sectoral approach. A tradition that has been built on our approach to community safety and well-being in this city, which we call SafetyO, a 10-year program towards developing a greater sense of community safety and well-being with tangible results. And this is a very important step in that journey that is indeed complex.
Now, while there were no specific solutions mentioned during that press conference with the mayor and police chief, advocates say this is a real important first step. The mayor also committing to continue these roundtable discussions in the fall. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Back to you.
Thank you, Mike. And still to come this half hour, a 65-year-old woman who worked for billionaire Frank Stronach more than 40 years ago speaks out following a slew of sex crime charges against him. But first, we turn our attention to the forecast. Sunshine has taken over the city. Warmth is in the air. Lots to love weather-wise as you go about your day. Jessica Smith is here to spell it all out for us. Much different than yesterday.
A significantly different story thanks to high pressure and a nice kind of moderate easterly wind. There's really not much going on in the satellite radar picture as we get throughout the day today. That changes significantly into the day tomorrow as we see the remnants of Tropical Storm Debbie making its way up towards us and another system in northern Ontario. We're not getting the brunt of it. That's what's prompting the statements in towards portions of southern Quebec, but we will still be on the periphery of that, getting a pretty significant, maybe 10 to 15 millimeter kind of range for rain Thursday into Friday. But for today, it is sunny and fairly seasonal right now, sitting at 23. It feels like 25 and around the Golden Horseshoe in that kind of low 20 range. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long range forecast. We'll break down the rain that is on the way and what you can expect for the weekend. But right now, it's back over to Raheem.
Thanks, Jess. A Toronto police officer has been found guilty of discreditable conduct and neglect of duty. Inspector Joyce Schertzer faced multiple charges for allegedly interfering with an investigation into a 2022 single vehicle crash involving her nephew. It was alleged she arranged for an officer from her division to be dispatched to another division where the crash occurred to benefit family. Schertzer also attended the scene but testified she did not interfere with the investigation, but to make sure her nephew was well. The police tribunal found her not guilty of a third count of neglect of duty.
Two companies are facing bylaw charges after a cyclist was struck and killed on a stretch of Bloor Street on July 25th. A 24-year-old woman was killed after she veered out of the bike lane on Bloor Avenue to avoid a large waste disposal bin blocking the lane. Mass Contracting Limited has been charged with encumbering a street, while Ontario Truck and Disposal Limited faces the same charge plus cause dangerous condition and a charge of unauthorized street occupation, as well as failing to provide proper signage warning the public of obstruction in the street. Each charge carries a $200 fine. Lawyer David Shelnut says there needs to be more serious consequences.
It is a slap on the wrist. We've got to look at our entire system of construction work, accountability, and road safety in Toronto. And if you are putting people at risk, and God forbid you injure or kill someone in doing it, perhaps you should not be able to work in the city again.
There's still no word on whether criminal charges might be laid.
Two Toronto men facing terror-related charges still do not have lawyers.
Bail hearings were put over to later dates again today. CTV's John Woodward is continuing to follow this story. He joins us with the latest. John.
Yeah, the father and son appeared in Newmarket Court this morning by video link as an accusation against the father from 2015 is sparking a political firestorm.
This is a colossal failure of Trudeau's national security system.
The Federal Conservative Party looking for answers in the case of Ahmed and Mustafa El-Didi, the father and son duo arrested last month amid a series of coordinated raids on a Scarborough street and a Richmond Hill hotel, and accused of plotting a potentially deadly terrorist attack in Toronto last month with a machete and an axe in service of the listed terrorist group ISIS. Among the charges was another accusation that the 62-year-old father had committed aggravated assault outside of Canada in 2015. The Conservatives wondering how he could have returned to Canada with that history.
Evidence exists that the father was involved in a horrific torture attack in an ISIS video. Shortly after the events in the video, this individual was admitted into Canada and later was granted citizenship by the Trudeau government.
In a statement, the offices of Immigration Minister Mark Miller and Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc said the Conservatives would rather risk undoing the tremendous work of our security agencies just to score a few political points. The people who work tirelessly to keep Canadians safe deserve better from their elected representatives. We will leave it to them to do their work and ensure that those who would seek to threaten the safety of our country be held responsible for their actions.
You'll notice the statement from the members of the Liberal government did not exactly answer the question. The RCMP said at the press conference last week that both were Canadian citizens, though it's not entirely clear when that citizenship was granted and if it was before this incident in 2015. Canadian citizens have the right to re-enter the country. As for the appearance here, neither of the accused had lawyers, and so the judge has put it over to next week. Reporting live from Newmarket, I'm John Woodward. Back to you.
Thank you, John. Toronto police are investigating after a fake bomb prompted the evacuation of two buildings at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus.
The bomb squad was called in last night and a device was detonated. CTV's Scott Lightfoot has the details.
For several hours, there was a large-scale lockdown on the University of Toronto's Scarborough campus.
We received a call regarding a suspicious package.
That discovery led to the immediate evacuation of the building as well as nearby buildings. Police also closed Military Trail. Students and staff could be seen waiting outside from a distance while members of the explosives disposal unit used a robot to photograph and x-ray the package before the decision was made to remotely detonate it.
Further examination later determined it to be a hoax device, meaning that the device was actually incapable of creating an explosion.
The remainder of the building was swept for explosives. Nothing was found. Police also say no threats were received.
Part of the investigation now will be to backtrack to see if a note or something else has been left. We have no knowledge and nothing to say that is right now. It's just that this device was found, and we're going to go from there. The investigation will take us where it leads.
Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
A former employee of billionaire auto parts magnate Frank Stronach claims Stronach sexually assaulted her more than 40 years ago. We're calling her Lee because her real name is protected under a court order.
A lawyer for Stronach says the allegation is unsubstantiated and his name will be cleared in court. A warning that some of the details might be disturbing for some viewers. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
This is you at the time. Tell me about what you see.
I was very happy working at the Boren.
The photo is from 1980. That summer, Lee was hired by Frank Stronach to work on his private farm to care for his racehorses. He had already made millions manufacturing auto parts. His company, Magna International, was growing.
Frank Stronach.
Stronach was also beginning to build his stable of championship thoroughbreds. Lee was 20 years old, about to turn 21. Her co-workers suggested celebrating her birthday in downtown Toronto at Stronach's restaurant, Rooney's.
Just a nice dress that I usually wore to church on Sundays. It wasn't anything outrageous.
She says that before she even looked at the menu, Stronach came to the table and poured champagne for the three women.
I gave in to peer pressure, and I don't think I drank that much champagne, but suddenly I was on the dance floor and he was holding me really, really tight, and I was trying to get away, and then he pushed my dress up, and he tore my pantyhose and just put his fingers inside of me.
Lee says the rest of the night was a blur. She remembers waking up hours later in a room near the Toronto Harbour with no recollection of how she got there.
I was on my back and I looked up and I could see him on top of me, and I could feel him, that he was having sex with me.
Peel Regional Police have charged Stronach with indecent assault and rape in Lee's case. Stronach's lawyer refused a request for an interview and calls the allegations unfounded and unsubstantiated. We intend to save the opportunity to clear Mr. Stronach's name for the courtroom, where he will be provided with a fair and just hearing. Lee says after the incident, Stronach drove her back to her car and acted like nothing happened. She quit her job at the stables the next day and never spoke to him again.
He wasn't my employer anymore. He was my abductor. He was my rapist.
Lee is one of 10 women who have come forward. Stronach faces allegations of sexual offenses dating back to 1977, and police believe there could be more victims. Judy Trin, CTV News, Aurora, Ontario.
Kamala Harris and her new running mate are off to the races.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has joined the U.S. Vice President on the Democratic ticket, and they appeared last night for the first time together. CTV's Mike Lecoutel reports.
On stage for the first time as running mates, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz packed a university sports arena in Philadelphia. Kicking off a 7-city tour, they laid out the choice before voters.
Our campaign, this campaign, is a fight for the future.
The little-known former high school teacher, coach, and governor giving the Democratic campaign a clear boost.
If Trump gets a chance to return, he's going to pick up exactly where he left off 4 years ago. Only this time, it will be much, much worse.
And Walz laid down this challenge to his opponent, J.D. Vance.
And I got to tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy.
A clear sign the gloves are off in this campaign. Hours earlier, Republicans released a new attack ad targeting Walz.
Having another left-wing extremist as her VP nominee.
The Trump campaign is trying to define the vice presidential candidate before Americans do their own research.
This is a guy who's proposed shipping more manufacturing jobs to China.
That pointed attack likely because of Walz's quip about Trump and Vance, which went viral a week ago.
These guys are just weird. That's who they are. So it isn't much else. Don't give them the power. Something old and something new.
That folksy feel is what some believe has set Walz apart from the other candidates Harris was considering as her running mate.
He's a happy-go-lucky warrior. He's not exactly somebody who's going to throw slings and arrows.
We share history, trade, investment.
In 2020, Walls reached across the border with that Canada Day message. And back in June, he led a trade mission to Ontario, highlighting the closeness between the two countries. This former U.S. ambassador is calling Harris and Walls perfect for cross-border relations.
She spent early years, her formative years in Montreal growing up. He lives next door to you and looks forward to much trade. Our number one trading partner in Minnesota is Canada. This is the Canada team.
But the road to the White House is a steep one. There are 90 days until the U.S. election, and there are a number of polls showing before today the majority of Americans hadn't even heard of Governor Walls. Mike Lecouteur, CTV News, Ottawa.
Back here at home, the Ford government is putting money into expanding drinking water plants to ensure homes can get built.
Premier Ford was in Mississauga to announce funding for one project as part of the rollout of almost $1 billion for scores of projects in different cities.
By getting these upgrades in place, we will help get 47,000 homes built right here in Peel. And folks, we're not stopping there. We've been blown away by the enthusiastic response to the first round of funding, and we're stepping it up. On August 14th, we will open applications for a second round of funding with $250 million to continue helping municipalities get shovels in the ground. This brings the total amount in the fund to more than $1.2 billion.
With today's announcement, the region of Peel is getting $35 million to expand the GE Booth water plant.
In Paris, Canada has advanced to the medal round in women's beach volleyball. They're the first women's team to play for an Olympic medal in that sport. Meantime, Andre de Grasse is back on the track this afternoon as he looks to defend his Olympic title in the men's 200-meter event. The Markham sprinter will race at 2:02 our time. The six-time medalist will be without his coach, whose accreditation was revoked by the Canadian Olympic Committee this week. Aaron Brown and Brendan Rodney, both from Toronto, were also in that race. Meantime, London, Ontario's Alicia Newman is set to compete in her first Olympic pole vault final today. That should be happening anytime now. And Quebec's Jean-Simon Desgagnés will go for gold in the men's 3,000-meter steeplechase final later today. Let's bring in our Scott Hurst, who's been monitoring all things Olympic. Scott, lots of Canadian talent to follow today. What's on your radar?
Let's first recap that beach volleyball match. This is the farthest a Canadian female duo has ever gone on the beach volleyball court on the Olympic stage. The duo of Melissa Humana-Paradis and Brandy Wilkerson on to the semifinals. That semifinal match will go tomorrow at 11 o'clock Eastern, and they'll face Switzerland in the semifinals. So the first time Canadian women will be competing for a medal on the Olympic stage on the beach volleyball court. You also mentioned Andre de Grasse going for the 200-meter semifinals today, along with two other Canadian sprinters. Of course, he is without his coach, who had his accreditation revoked by the Canadian Olympic Committee. As you mentioned, the reigning Olympic champion in the event, disappointment in the 100-meter earlier this week. He did not qualify for the finals there, so he is going for a spot in the finals later this afternoon at 2 o'clock, along with Aaron Brown and Brendan Rodney. And a day to forget, unfortunately, for Mo Ahmed on the track, taking a tumble in the men's 5,000-meter heats. He is the reigning Olympic silver medalist in the event. He fell heading into the final lap, missing out on a spot for the podium at Paris. Unfortunately, he will not be able to move on to the final race and get a chance to get back to the podium after getting on the podium in Tokyo. So extreme disappointment there on the track for Mo Ahmed. So quite a few things to watch out for today. As you mentioned, also Alicia Newman, the pole vaulting final that gets underway any moment in Paris.
As we await that, can we revel in our latest gold medal, a historic one in the women's hammer throw? Hey, Canadians are really good at hammer throw. Canadians
are incredible at hammer throw. We've seen it both on the women's and men's side now. Quite a dominating force, both medals, and so quite an accomplishment for Cameron Rogers from Richmond, BC, just outside Vancouver. The 25-year-old in her second Olympic Games. She finished 5th in Tokyo and has only gotten better since then. She is the reigning world champion as well, and now Olympic champion to her resume, and she is quite ecstatic. We heard from her just a short time ago about that moment she found out she was Olympic champion.
Definitely a pretty unbelievable and surreal feeling. That might be the hour of sleep I got last night from talking to all my friends, but everything happening, I feel like it's just been such a whirlwind. So much has happened in such a short period of time, but all of it is just the best things possible. I feel like I've shared some of the coolest and most special moments probably in my whole entire life in the last 12 hours alone.
Michelle, of course, 12 hours she'll remember for a lifetime. And she went on to say that even with the massive roar of the crowd when she found out that she was going to be the gold medalist, she said that even through all the noise, she could still pick out the cheering from her coach and the cheering from her family. So quite an incredible moment for her, winning gold on the women's side. And of course, Ethan Katzberg a couple days ago winning gold in the men's hammer throw as well. So we are a hammer throw nation, Michelle.
We sure are. Amazing. Thank you so much, CTV's Scott Hurst, live for us in the National Newsroom. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
To Bangladesh now, where the military says an interim government will be sworn in tomorrow night. It will be headed by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, who spoke today before leaving Paris.
I'm looking forward to going back home and see what's happening there and how we can organize ourselves to get out of the trouble that we're in. Thank you very much.
Yunus was asked when elections will be held, but appeared to indicate it is still too early to tell. Bangladesh is preparing to form the interim government after a mass uprising that left hundreds of people dead and hundreds of others injured. The streets were calm after reports of violence against supporters, police, minority communities, and the prime minister, who fled to India.
At least 2 people have been killed and several injured after a hotel collapsed in Germany's Moselle Wine Valley. Rescue efforts are underway to save the remaining guests, including a 2-year-old child. Officials say the 2-story building was unstable after the upper floor caved in overnight. The cause of this incident is not yet clear.
Canada is advising its citizens to exercise a high degree of caution in the United Kingdom. The advisory comes as British police brace for fresh riots across the country that target asylum enters and immigration law firms. The riots have been fueled by anti-Muslim and anti-immigration sentiments following misinformation that spread about the identity of a 17-year-old suspect of a knife attack that killed 3 young girls. So far, more than 420 people have been arrested and 140 charged as Prime Minister Keir Starmer vows to yield the full force of law.
Summer McIntosh back in Toronto after making history in the pool in Paris.
She arrived at Pearson late yesterday afternoon with 3 gold medals and a silver medal in tow. CTV's Mike Walker reports.
Returning home to fanfare, the feeling still surreal for Olympic champion Summer McIntosh.
I don't think it's fully sunk in yet. I wasn't expecting it necessarily, but I mean, it means the world to see everyone's support for me and Team Canada.
The 17-year-old swimming phenom from Toronto arriving at Pearson Airport this afternoon after a historic performance in the pool at the Paris Games, winning 3 gold medals and a silver.
First time standing on the podium in the former I am and hearing the national anthem and seeing the Canadian flag was pretty incredible.
Her accomplishments record-setting, becoming the first Canadian athlete to win 3 gold medals in 1 Olympic Games.
It means the world, and I'm just very proud of kind of how all my hard work has kind of come into the light.
Her parents overjoyed with a near-perfect week in Paris.
It was amazing to watch Summer compete and really live up to her full potential. It was absolutely incredible.
The most meaningful medal, McIntosh says, is the gold she won in the 200-meter butterfly, the same event her mother competed in at the Los Angeles Games in 1984.
The fact that my mom swam the tuna fly back in 1984 Olympic Games, and for me to get it the gold medal in 2024 Games is pretty cool for sure.
We're so proud of Summer, how hard she's worked, and all her hard work's paid off. I mean, as parents, you can't be more proud. And
McIntosh also matched teammate Penny Alexiak for the most medals won by a Canadian athlete at a single Summer Games. Her eyes already on the 2028 Olympics, but first, the triple gold medalist is looking forward to letting her accomplishments sink in.
I can kind of enjoy this moment and appreciate all that has happened in the past few weeks.
Focusing on being a teenager again and celebrating her 18th birthday later this month.
Mike Walker, CTV News, Toronto.
And congratulations again to her. And it's a great day to get out for a swim. We have sunshine and temperatures a little closer to that seasonal mark, so enjoyable to spend some time outdoors. But a UV index on the higher side, so sun protection key and hydration for spending time outside. If you're a little less adventurous and you wanted to sit on a patio, temperature-wise, it'll be quite nice as we head right throughout the afternoon with a comfortable humidex value. But there is some active weather on the way. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast and break down the rain and what you can expect as we head into the weekend.
Welcome back. It was nice to wake up and see the sunshine pop out after yesterday's cloud cover.
It just changes the whole vibe of your day. I mean, it's okay to have cloud and rain sometimes, but this is what the summer's all about. We've got the sun, comfortable temperatures. It was really cool yesterday. Now it's feeling more like it.
We're getting back into that seasonal range, and we do stay there for a couple of days, but we are watching for the remnants of Tropical Storm Debbie to make its way towards us. So we are on the periphery, but the heavier amounts of rain are going to be in eastern Ontario and southern Quebec, but we are still going to see some of that as we get through our Thursday and Friday. But we're focused on the sunshine today. That's the rain problem of tomorrow. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. Now, we saw brilliant sunshine this morning. A great day. A nice shot here from Billy Bishop. Beautiful outside. Lots of sun out there and great for getting out and enjoying the summer season. I know there's so much that goes on in the city throughout the summer. It's my personal favorite time of the year in the city of Toronto and really right across the GTA because there's so much to do. But you got to think about sun protection and hydration. It's great to be outside, but you got to do it safely. Temperature-wise, we're still kind of in the low 20s. It's not cool, but it is refreshing if you spend some time outside early on in the day. And then we warm up as we head into the afternoon. Right now, it feels like 25 and almost everywhere in central and southern portions of the province, feeling fairly seasonal. As we get into the afternoon, 25, feeling like 27, 28. So when you factor in the humidex and the kind of light easterly breeze, we're holding on right at that seasonal mark. And that's really the same almost right across southern Ontario. Heading into this evening, a little more cloud cover starts to move in ahead of the rain. We'll sit at 19, the seasonal norm is 17, and almost everywhere we're kind of at or just above that seasonal mark. The bulk of the rain is going to kind of sit just south of us throughout the day tomorrow, but we'll see it kind of start to trickle in. It kind of collides with another system making its way through northern Ontario, and the two of them will kind of intersect more so east of us, but we're still going to see it here in the city. As we make our way throughout the day, that low pushes its way across. That rain down there, that is the remnants of Tropical Storm Debbie, likely to become a depression as it kind of makes its way over land. Throughout the day today, though, that issue, not our problem. Not yet anyways. We're holding on to a ton of sunshine, and it will be really beautiful start to finish as we head throughout the day with a light kind of easterly wind. Heading throughout the day tomorrow, we start off with sunshine, and then we'll watch for increasing cloud cover and then just scattered very light showers across really the majority of southern Ontario. It really isn't until Thursday night that we see the rain start to push in. And then it's as we get Thursday night into our Friday morning where the bulk of the heavy rain is going to be. Niagara Falls really does get the brunt of it as we head throughout kind of that midpoint of our day. So we're just on the cusp of it. So we will see that rain. We're not going to see the same intensity as areas in towards Niagara and further east of us. But we're still looking at potentially 10 to 15 millimeters, which we know it doesn't take much for localized flooding to happen on the roads and highways. So just as kind of heads up for your Friday. As we head in towards the rest of our week, though, it really is quite seasonal, even with all that rain, and the humidex is still pretty high. Heading into your weekend, Saturday and Sunday, the rain, it goes out. We look at beautiful sunshine, but as all that cloud cover lifts, so does a lot of the heat. So we dip below seasonal, just 20 for our Sunday, but it's all right. It's sunny, and I will take it. Michelle, Raheem, I'll send it back over to you.
Thank you, Jess. From what's in the sky to what's in the air, a new study from McGill University suggests air pollution in Toronto is linked to more than 1,000 premature deaths each year. A research team tracked air pollution levels from the year 2001 to 2016 in certain neighborhoods, then used models to estimate how many pollutant particles were in the air at different times. The study used statistical models to calculate the connection between exposure to the particles and the risk of death. The findings associate long-term exposure to ultrafine particles with a 7.3% increase in the risk of non-accidental death.
An enormous iceberg that's larger than most Canadian cities and the largest ever recorded is stuck in a vortex.
It's in the South Atlantic and has been spinning in the same spot for months. CTV's Sarah Plowman reports.
In a dance with nature, the world's largest iceberg is spinning. A chunk of ice about 2/3 the size of Prince Edward Island, trapped in a slow twirl off Antarctica, as it's been for months.
It's got stuck in this kind of stagnant column of water, which we call a Taylor column. And it's just very gently rotating there.
It split from the southernmost continent nearly 40 years ago, got stuck on a seabed for decades and began moving again, but instead of drifting north and melting like icebergs typically do, lately it's only been turning about 15 degrees each day.
And what we really don't understand is how long it's going to get stuck there.
Below the iceberg sit underwater mountains. As the Earth rotates, currents move around the seamount, and that phenomenon extends to the surface.
And so that means, in fact, the water on top of that seamount is isolated from the rest of the world ocean. And this iceberg has got stuck on that thing, and it's just going to sit there and spin for a very long time.
Onlookers are in awe of its size and also its height, about 400 meters tall.
If you look at the CN Tower, that's about how high the observation deck is.
Curious to see, much like its journey.
It got beached when no one expected it to get beached, and then it broke free, and now it's stuck in this funny little vortex that no one expected.
A slow spin, catching the world's attention. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
Still to come, air passenger rights advocates are fighting back after WestJet capped compensation for delayed flights.
A lawsuit has been launched against a big Canadian airline. WestJet is being sued over passenger compensation. The group Air Passenger Rights has filed a suit centered on compensation limits. APR says customers are being misled as the airline caps compensation when flights are delayed or canceled. We're talking compensation for things like hotels and meals. The group insists such a cap is against the law. For more on this, we're joined now by the founder and president of Air Passenger Rights, Gabor Lukacs. Thanks for joining us. You insist that WestJet is not only offside here, but breaking the law. Help us understand your lawsuit.
Good afternoon. So under the law, if a flight is delayed or canceled for reasons within WestJet's control, WestJet is required to provide passengers with meals and accommodation as needed for the purpose of the delay or disruption. In some cases, WestJet refuses or is unable to provide meals and accommodation directly, and passengers, as a result, incur expenses far in excess of the caps that WestJet is trying to impose on passengers. And WestJet is trying to tell passengers, regardless of the fact that it was WestJet that failed to deliver, it was WestJet that failed to provide meals and accommodation, passengers would still be footing the bill for some of these expenses, which WestJet was supposed to cover to begin with. And this is simply wrong. There's nothing in the law that would provide WestJet with an excuse to not cover fully passengers' meals and accommodation when a flight is disrupted for reasons entirely within the carrier's control. We just would like to put back money into passengers' pockets that belongs to the passengers to begin with.
What WestJet is doing with this capping, how does that compare to other airlines?
I'm not aware of any other airline that would actually publish on its website a guideline that could mislead passengers to believe that they are owed only up to $150 for accommodation or $45 per meal per day when they are stranded by the airline. Some airlines may have been doing it on a case-by-case basis, perhaps in private emails that have been sent, possibly, but not in such a blatant, obvious, direct way right on their website. This is the most egregious type of behavior that we are seeing currently in Canada, and we are dealing with this under the British Columbia legislation, the consumer protection legislation, where we brought a public interest lawsuit. So it is not that we are asking money for ourselves, rather we are asking the court to stop WestJet's behavior and to put money back into passengers' pockets where it belongs.
I'm glad you noted that because, yes, it's the fact that these guidelines are suggesting this is all you're entitled to. Your lawsuit is saying, you know, you're going to mislead Canadians and thinking that's all they're entitled to. In fact, they would be entitled to more. WestJet, for its part, isn't commenting because this is before the courts. Help us understand the next steps here and what ideally you want to get out of it.
The next steps would be for WestJet to file a defense. And I expect WestJet is going to try to drag this out as long as possible because their financial interest here is to keep doing what they're doing as long as they can get away with it. What we are trying to achieve here is 3 or 4 goals. First, we would like to ensure that this misleading information is removed from WestJet's website. Second, we would like to stop WestJet from continuing to refuse passengers reimbursement requests for meals and accommodation owed to them on the basis of reference to these guidelines. Third, we would like to compel WestJet to pay passengers what is owed to them under the law. And fourth, we would like to compel WestJet to publish the court's judgment and notify passengers who were harmed by this behavior that they are owed more.
Gabor Lukacs of Air Passenger Rights, thank you so much for spelling out the lawsuit for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Take care.
The popular Netflix series Stranger Things is getting the Broadway treatment.
It's not real. I'm normal.
A stage production inspired by the hit show will premiere on Broadway next spring after first debuting in London last year. Stranger Things, The First Shadow, is a prequel taking place in the 1950s, decades before the show based in the 80s.
In other entertainment news, a Canadian father-son duo could be hosting the Emmys this year. Eugene and Dan Levy are reportedly in talks to host this year's ceremony. The two co-created and starred on the popular sitcom Schitt's Creek. They've presented at award ceremonies before and once guest hosted The Ellen Show as a duo. The Emmys air Sunday, September 15th.
Well, Drake has surprised fans by granting them access to his digital archives. The rapper released a large collection of material online unannounced. The files include 3 previously unheard songs, as well as photographs and behind-the-scenes videos. The content can be accessed on the site 100gigs.org. It features 40 different folders named after various album releases and significant points in Drake's career.
Taylor Swift has earned the most MTV Video Music Award nominations for a second straight year. Swift has received 10 nods for her songs and videos. She will be looking to extend her record-breaking Video of the Year winning streak to 3 straight years and 5 times overall. Post Malone is second with 9 nominations, while Ariana Grande and Eminem both have 6. The MTV VMAs will be broadcast on September 10th.
Still to come, a rebound continues on the stock market after a rough start to the week. We'll have the details in business.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Stocks continued their recovery today from that 3-day sell-off that pushed the American market down 6%.
Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg brings us the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Canadian and U.S. stocks rose for a second day, rebounding from a 3-day drop that began late last week. Investors were encouraged by signs that big players have been buying into the decline to seek bargains. In Toronto, Shopify soared more than 20% today after sales and profit beat analyst estimates. And Suncor was up 6% amid upgrades from BMO and TD on strong oil sands production. And investors have been buying back into Canadian telecom stocks, which have been hurt over the past year by concerns over price wars. CIBC says the group rose about 9% in July as, quote, wireless pricing returned to steady state levels at the provider's discount brands. And the stocks have risen again in August, despite a drop of about 4% in the TSX Composite Index from last week's record high. The group includes BCE, parent of CTV and BNN Bloomberg. And finally, uranium stocks have been under pressure over the past week amid fears that an increase in Kazakhstan's production will dent prices. But China's nuclear program is forging ahead. Bloomberg says the nation is adding nuclear power as the rest of the world stalls and, quote, the scale and speed of Beijing's crusade is hard to overstate. Bloomberg now expects China to leapfrog France and the US in capacity by the end of the decade. China has 30 reactors under construction. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
A U.S. federal judge ruled this week that Alphabet's Google broke the law with its monopoly over online searches and related ads. The Justice Department had sued the company over its control of about 90% of the online search market and 95% on smartphones. Google paid $26.3 billion in 2021 alone to ensure that its search engine is the default on smartphones and browsers and to keep its dominant market share. Well, to help break down the details, let's bring in CTV's tech specialist, Carmen Levy. Carmi, so the court says that Google is operating as a monopoly. Help us break down what that exactly means in this context.
So when you and I, Rahim, when we use our smartphones to search for something, we open up a search box and we search. We don't think about what's going on underneath the surface. Google pays for the privilege of being the default search engine on iPhones. $20 billion to Apple last year alone. They do the same thing with Samsung devices. $8 billion over 4 years. And so this is prime real estate. And we know full well that you and I and most people who use phones, we aren't going to dig into the settings to change those defaults. So that's worth a lot of money to Google, because essentially it means if we're searching using their search engine, then it's Google that gets to keep all the revenue from the advertising that's built on top of that. So essentially what the court, what the judge is saying is by paying these huge amounts, you're preventing other companies from competing. You are acting as a monopoly. You're hindering innovation, you're hindering competition, and as a result, you're making things worse for consumers because advertising costs more and then products cost more based on that advertising. It's a bad scenario for pretty much everybody.
So with this ruling, what does this mean for you and I? When I open my phone to go Google something or search something, does that mean I'm going to be using a different browser? Is it going to look or feel any different for me?
In the short term, nothing's going to change for anybody because Google has vowed to appeal this case, and it's likely going to kind of wind its way through the courts for a number of years. But assuming that it ends up with Google losing the appeal and it's got to sort of do something to fix this, we might very well see changes to the way those defaults are set. We might get what's called a choice screen, so that when we open up our phone, we'll get a little pop-up that says, what do you want as your default search engine? Do you want it to be Google? Do you want it to be Bing, DuckDuckGo, something else, or maybe even something AI powered? And so that might change. We might see the company itself be broken up, and we might see it fined as well. So it could go anywhere, but yeah, it will change the way we use it because it'll make it more in our face what's going on under the surface. We will have more choice over which search engine we choose to use.
Interesting to see what happens in the coming months ahead. Thanks for that, CTV's tech specialist, Carmi Levy. Thanks for that, Carmi.
Thanks, Raheem. Appreciate it.
Athletes are taking part in competition across Ottawa this week to celebrate a new lease on life. The Canadian Transplant Games are aimed at raising awareness as people wait for organ or tissue donations. CTV's Sam Hout has the details.
Riley Mitchell taking a throw at Orleans Bowling Center. Some poor luck, but she's got one heck of a supportive crowd with her today.
It's absolutely amazing. Our community is always lovely to be in. It really connects everybody, and it feels like you're not different anymore. Everybody's the same.
Riley was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy and received a heart transplant at 7 months old. Around her are fellow members and success stories from Canada's transplant community. Families and friends celebrating their renewed lease on life as part of the Canadian Transplant Games.
All of our bowlers are organ recipients from 4 to 80. All of the people have received an organ transplant or a tissue or stem cell.
For my donor! The games continued out at Pineview Golf Course in Gloucester. Larry Kreklowicz is braving the rain to tag along.
We get to rekindle old friendships. There's lots of hugs, lots of tears when we do meet.
2024 will mark 50 years since his kidney transplant, and while it's a time of celebration, the stark figures that more than 4,000 Canadians are on the wait list for a transplant and that 250 will die waiting each year remains with him.
A thank you is
Okay.
a thank you isn't enough to say for all our donors. I know a number of us wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the donors.
The games continue this week at sports complexes around the city, sending out the call for more Canadians to consider giving a second chance to someone in need.
We always want Canadians to think about it, talk to your family about your decision, and register your decision to be a donor.
Sam Haupt, CTV News.
York Regional Police are searching for a suspect in a carjacking, which was caught on camera at a Newmarket gas station. A man can be seen walking in the top left of the screen. He enters a vehicle as a woman is getting gas. Now, she then becomes involved in a struggle with the man. Another driver attempts to block the suspect with their vehicle, but he managed to get away. York Regional Police say Zail Singh Sidhu is wanted in connection with the carjacking. He was last seen wearing a powder blue short-sleeve polo shirt, black pants, and blue prisoner-issued shoes. Police say he had just been released on bail on an unrelated offense.
On the auto theft front, here's something interesting. New data indicates Hyundai and Kia's latest anti-theft software update is showing results. According to the Highway Loss Data Institute, insurance claims for stolen Hyundai and Kia vehicles are 64% lower among cars which have had the anti-theft upgrade. That number was compared to cars of the same make, model, and year without the upgrade. Last February, those two car makers released the update following a series of social media posts showing how to steal their vehicles. From early 2020 through to the first half of 2023, thefts of Hyundai and Kia vehicles rose more than 1,000%.
Well, that's going to do it for CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and all of us here, have a wonderful afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Rahim Ladani. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6 o'clock.